The first thing Commander Ben Torres noticed when he woke up was the pain. It shot through his left shoulder like fire, spreading down his arm and across his chest. The second thing he noticed was that he was alive, which seemed strange considering the last thing he remembered was watching his ship explode around him. Ben opened his eyes slowly. Above him stretched a ceiling made of what looked like blue crystal, glowing with soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The walls around him were the same material, smooth and seamless. He was lying on a platform that felt warm against his back, and when he tried to sit up, he realized he was in some kind of cell. His uniform was torn and burned. The left side of his shirt had been cut away, revealing the wound on his shoulder. It was deep and angry, with edges that looked melted rather than cut. Ben recognized the signature of plasma fire immediately. The alien weapons had found their mark during the battle. He pressed his right hand against the wound and winced. The pain was intense, but not as bad as it should have been. Plasma weapons didn't just burn flesh, they poisoned it. The Zephyrian military used biotoxins in their plasma charges that were designed to spread through the bloodstream and shut down vital organs within minutes. Ben had seen what those weapons did to his crew members during the fighting. Yet here he was, hours later by his estimate, still breathing and still thinking clearly. Ben pushed himself up to a sitting position and looked around his prison more carefully. The cell was about 10 feet square, with walls that rose 12 feet high. There was no door that he could see, just smooth crystal surfaces on all sides. The platform he had been lying on seemed to be the only furniture in the space. Outside his cell, he could see a larger chamber with more crystal formations. Strange symbols glowed along the walls, shifting and changing in patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. The air smelled metallic and sharp, with an undertone of something organic that he couldn't identify. Ben stood up carefully, testing his balance. His left arm was nearly useless, hanging at his side and sending waves of pain through his shoulder with every movement. But his legs worked fine, and his head was clear. He walked to one of the walls and pressed his good hand against it. The crystal was warm and seemed to pulse under his touch. When he pushed against it, nothing happened. When he kicked it with his boot, it didn't even make a sound. Whatever this material was, it was far beyond human technology. "So you're awake." The voice came from everywhere at once, speaking perfect English with a slight accent he didn't recognize. Ben spun around, looking for the source, but saw nothing. "Down here, human." Ben looked down and saw a small device on the floor near the platform, about the size of his fist and shaped like a pyramid. It glowed with the same blue light as the walls. "A translator," Ben said aloud. "Correct. My name is Dr. Catherine. I am the chief medical officer of this vessel. You are aboard the flagship of Queen Velnara of the Zephyrian Empire." Ben had heard of Queen Velnara. Every human in the military had. She was the one who led the invasion fleets that conquered world after world. Her species was known for their medical knowledge and their use of biological weapons that made resistance futile. "How long have I been here?" Ben asked. 6 hours and 37 minutes since we pulled you from the wreckage of your ship." Ben touched his shoulder again. 6 hours with a plasma wound full of Zephyrian biotoxins. He should have been dead 4 times over by now. "I'm going to ask you some questions," Dr. Catherine continued. "It would be wise to answer them truthfully. I'll tell you my name, rank, and service number. That's all you get." There was a pause before the voice responded. "We already know who you are, Commander Torres. What we want to know is why you're still alive." Before Ben could answer, the wall in front of him began to shimmer. The crystal became transparent, then disappeared entirely, creating an opening large enough for someone to walk through. Ben tensed, ready to fight or run, but quickly realized there was nowhere to go. The first alien to enter was tall and thin, with pale green skin and 4 arms. It wore a long coat that looked like it was made from the same crystal material as the walls. In 2 of its hands, it carried what looked like medical equipment. This had to be Dr. Catherine. Behind the doctor came two guards. They were shorter and broader than the doctor, with dark blue skin and what looked like natural armor plating covering their bodies. Each carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Finally, Queen Velnara entered the cell. Ben had seen pictures of Zephyrians before, but none of them had prepared him for the reality of meeting their queen. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 6 arms and skin that shifted between deep purple and black depending on how the light hit it. Her head was elongated, with 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across her face. Each eye was a different color, ranging from gold to deep red to brilliant blue. She wore robes that seemed to be made from living metal, flowing and changing shape as she moved. Around her neck hung a collar made of the same crystal material as the cell walls, but this crystal pulsed with multiple colors that shifted in complex patterns. Queen Velnara approached Ben slowly, her 6 eyes fixed on his wounded shoulder. When she spoke, her voice was deeper than the translator had made it sound, with harmonics that made Ben's bones vibrate. "Show me the wound," she said. Ben looked at the guards, then at Dr. Catherine, then back at the Queen. "Why?" "Because you should be dead, human. 6 hours ago, you were struck by a Type 7 plasma charge loaded with Nexarian biotoxin. That toxin breaks down cellular structure at the molecular level. No known species can survive contact with it for more than 20 minutes. Maybe your intel on human biology is wrong." Queen Velnara's eyes changed color, shifting toward the red end of the spectrum. "We have conquered 17 worlds, human. We have studied the biology of 43 different intelligent species. Our medical knowledge is absolute. Nothing survives Nexarian toxin." "I'm not nothing," Ben said. The Queen stepped closer, and Ben caught her scent. It was sharp and clean, like ozone after lightning. She raised 2 of her arms toward his shoulder. "I'm going to examine your wound. You may resist if you wish, but my guards will subdue you, and the examination will proceed regardless." Ben looked at the guards again. Their weapons were pointed at him now, and he could see energy building up in the barrels. He had no doubt they could drop him without killing him if they needed to. "Fine," Ben said. "But no funny business." Dr. Catherine stepped forward and activated one of his devices. A beam of pale light swept over Ben's shoulder, and images appeared in the air above the device. Ben could see his own wound in 3 dimensions, with different colors highlighting different types of tissue. Queen Velnara leaned in close to study the images. Her 6 eyes moved independently, each one focusing on a different part of the display. Ben could hear her breathing, which sounded like wind through a cave. "Impossible," she whispered, the word barely audible. Dr. Catherine manipulated the display, zooming in on different areas of the wound. "Your Majesty, look at the cellular activity in the affected tissue." Ben couldn't understand what they were seeing, but he could tell from their body language that something was wrong. Dr. Catherine's 4 arms were moving rapidly, adjusting controls and changing the display. Queen Velnara's eyes had all shifted to the same deep blue color, which Ben guessed meant she was concentrating hard. "The toxin is present," Dr. Catherine said. "I can see the molecular signature throughout the damaged tissue. But look at this." The display changed, showing what looked like tiny bright dots moving through Ben's bloodstream near the wound. "Antibodies," Queen Velnara said. "Not just antibodies, Your Majesty. These are unlike anything in our medical database. They're not just neutralizing the toxin, they're learning from it. Each generation is more effective than the last." Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the cell. "What does that mean?" Queen Velnara turned all 6 of her eyes toward him. "It means your immune system is doing something that should be biologically impossible. The Nexarian toxin doesn't just kill tissue, it prevents the body from fighting back. It shuts down immune response completely. But not in humans," Dr. Catherine added. "In humans, it seems to trigger an adaptive response. Your body isn't just fighting the toxin, it's studying it and developing better defenses against it." Ben looked at his shoulder again. The wound still hurt, but now that he thought about it, the pain was different from what it had been when he first woke up. Less sharp, more like a deep ache. "That's not possible," he said. "That's what we thought," Queen Velnara replied. "Tell me, human, what do you know of your species' medical history?" "What kind of question is that? Answer me." Ben shrugged with his good shoulder. "We've survived a lot of diseases. Plagues, viruses, bacterial infections. We've had wars where biological weapons were used. Humans are tough, I guess." "Tough," Queen Velnara repeated the word slowly. "Dr. Catherine, bring up the files on the other species we've encountered." The display above the medical device changed, showing a series of biological charts and data streams that meant nothing to Ben. But he could see that there were dozens of them, each one labeled with a different species name. 43 species, Queen Velnara said. Some were more technologically advanced than humans. Some had superior physical capabilities. Some had longer lifespans or greater intelligence. But all of them had one thing in common. She gestured toward the display. All of them evolved on worlds that were relatively stable. Their immune systems developed to handle specific threats in specific environments. When faced with unknown pathogens, they were helpless. Ben was starting to understand. But Earth wasn't stable. "No," Dr. Catherine said. "According to our database, your world went through multiple extinction events. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, massive climate changes. Your species survived by adapting constantly to new threats. More than that," Queen Velnara added. "Your species created new threats for itself. You developed diseases as weapons and used them against each other. You exposed yourselves to radiation and toxins and poisons, and those who survived passed on their resistance to their children." Ben felt a strange sense of pride mixed with horror. "So we're hard to kill because we've been trying to kill each other for thousands of years." "Precisely. And now we face a problem we have never encountered before." Queen Velnara moved closer to Ben, her presence filling the small cell. Her 6 eyes were all focused on his face now, and he could see intelligence there that was both alien and unmistakably real. "For the first time in our expansion across the galaxy," she said, "we have encountered a species that cannot be defeated by biological warfare. Your immune systems don't just resist our weapons, they improve because of them. Every human we kill makes the survivors stronger." The implication hit Ben like a physical blow. "You're afraid of us." Queen Velnara's eyes shifted color again, moving through the spectrum from blue to purple to something close to black. "Fear is not the correct word, human. Concern is more accurate. We have built our empire on the principle that superior medical knowledge equals superior military power. We study our enemies' biology, develop specific toxins to exploit their weaknesses, and watch them collapse without firing a shot. But that won't work on humans. No. It will make you stronger. And if you become strong enough to resist our weapons completely, you become a threat to our entire civilization." Ben leaned back against the crystal wall, his mind racing. Everything he had been taught about the Zephyrian Empire was wrong. They weren't invincible conquerors with superior technology. They were specialists who had found one very effective strategy and used it over and over again. But that strategy depended on their enemies being vulnerable to biological attack. Humans weren't vulnerable. Humans were the exact opposite of vulnerable. "So what now?" Ben asked. Queen Velnara studied him for a long moment before responding. "Now, Commander Torres, we must decide what to do about your species. And you are going to help us understand exactly what we're dealing with." She turned to leave, then paused at the opening in the crystal wall. "Dr. Catherine, continue monitoring his recovery. I want detailed reports on his immune response every hour." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And Commander Torres," she added, looking back at him with all 6 eyes. "I suggest you rest while you can. Tomorrow, we're going to run some tests that will help us understand the full extent of your species' capabilities. The opening in the wall shimmered and became solid crystal again, leaving Ben alone with his thoughts and his impossible wound. He sat down on the platform and closed his eyes, trying to process everything he had learned. The Zephyrian Empire was afraid of humanity, not because humans were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because they were survivors. Earth had made them into something that couldn't be broken by the usual methods. Ben opened his eyes and looked at his shoulder again. The pain was definitely less now than it had been an hour ago. If Dr. Catherine was right, his body was actually using the alien toxin to make itself stronger. For the first time since waking up in the crystal cell, Ben smiled. Queen Velnara thought she was going to run tests on him to understand human capabilities. But she had already told him the most important thing he needed to know. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, conquerors of 17 worlds, was afraid of what humans might become. And that fear was going to be their downfall. Ben woke to the sound of his cell wall dissolving again. This time, he was ready. He had spent the night doing exercises with his good arm, testing his strength and mobility. His wounded shoulder felt much better, though it still ached when he moved it too quickly. Dr. Catherine entered first, carrying more equipment than before. Behind him came Queen Velnara and 4 guards instead of 2. Ben noticed that the guards kept their weapons ready and maintained more distance than they had the previous day. "Good morning, Commander Torres," Queen Velnara said. "I trust you slept well." "Like a baby," Ben replied. "Nothing like being imprisoned by alien invaders to help you relax." The Queen's eyes shifted to a darker blue. Ben was beginning to understand that color changes meant different emotional states, though he couldn't decode all of them yet. "Dr. Catherine has prepared several tests that will help us understand your species better," she said. "Your cooperation would be appreciated, but it is not required." Ben stood up and stretched, making sure to move his injured shoulder enough to show that it was working better than it should. "What kind of tests?" "Physical stress responses, psychological evaluations, immune system analysis," Dr. Catherine answered. "We want to understand how humans react to various forms of pressure." "Pressure," Ben repeated. "You mean torture?" "We prefer the term, controlled stimulus application," Queen Velnara said. "We have no interest in causing unnecessary pain. We simply need data." Ben laughed, which seemed to surprise all of the aliens in the cell. "Lady, if you wanted cooperation, you probably shouldn't have started by blowing up my ship and killing my crew. Your crew chose to resist our forces. Our crew chose to defend our territory. There's a difference." Queen Velnara moved closer to Ben, her 6 eyes studying his face. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know about the worlds we have conquered? I know you've taken 17 systems. I know you use biological weapons to break resistance. I know you think you're superior to everyone else because you have better medical technology. And what do you think happened to the inhabitants of those worlds?" Ben had wondered about that. Human intelligence reports suggested that the Zephyrians didn't practice genocide, but captured populations seemed to disappear from their conquered territories. "I figured you enslaved them or relocated them somewhere," he said. "No. They simply died. Not from our weapons, but from despair." Dr. Catherine activated one of his devices, and images appeared in the air above it. Ben saw what looked like alien cities, but empty ones. Buildings stood intact, but there were no people moving through the streets. "When we conquer a world, we demonstrate the futility of resistance by using our biological weapons on their military forces," Queen Velnara explained. "The civilian population witnesses the complete defeat of their defenders. They see their strongest warriors reduced to helplessness in minutes." The images changed, showing what looked like hospital wards filled with alien beings lying motionless in beds. "The psychological impact is total," Dr. Catherine added. "When a species realizes that their biology makes them completely vulnerable to us, they lose the will to continue living. They develop what we call conquest syndrome, a form of depression so severe that they stop eating, stop reproducing, and eventually stop breathing. Ben stared at the images, feeling sick. They give up. Within 6 months of conquest, the average world loses 90% of its population to conquest syndrome, Queen Velnara said. The remaining 10% become completely dependent on us for survival. They lose their cultural identity, their sense of purpose, their very will to exist as a distinct species. That's horrible. That's evolution. The weak are replaced by the strong. We provide medical care and protection, and in return, the survivors serve our empire. It's a fair exchange. Ben felt anger building in his chest, hot and sharp. You don't conquer worlds. You break them. Yes. And it has worked perfectly for 300 years. Until now. Queen Velnara gestured to Dr. Catherine, who began setting up more equipment around the cell. Ben counted at least 6 different devices, all of them humming with energy. Humans present a unique challenge, the Queen continued. Your biology resists our weapons, but more importantly, your psychology resists our conquest methods. Dr. Catherine, show him the preliminary data. A new image appeared above one of the devices. It showed a human figure. Ben realized it was a scan of his own body, with various systems highlighted in different colors. After 18 hours in captivity, your stress hormone levels are actually lower than they were when we first captured you, Dr. Catherine explained. Your immune system is not just fighting our toxin, it's producing excess antibodies that are circulating through your entire body. Your muscle tone has improved, and your neural activity suggests you've been planning and problem-solving rather than despairing. So what? Ben said. So you're exhibiting the exact opposite of conquest syndrome, Queen Velnara replied. Instead of breaking under pressure, you're becoming stronger. Instead of giving up, you're adapting. Ben felt a surge of pride. Humans are tough. We don't break easy. That's what we're beginning to understand. But we need more data to determine exactly how tough. Dr. Catherine activated one of his devices, and Ben felt a tingling sensation spread through his body. It wasn't painful, but it was definitely doing something to him. Stress response test number 1, the doctor announced. Mild electrical stimulation designed to trigger fight-or-flight responses. The tingling increased, becoming more like pins and needles throughout his nervous system. Ben gritted his teeth and forced himself to remain calm. He could feel his heart rate increasing, but he also felt his mind becoming more focused. Interesting, Dr. Catherine said, studying readouts on his equipment. Normal response would be panic and system overload. Human response is heightened awareness and improved reaction time. Humans have been using electrical stimulation in training and therapy for decades, Ben said through clenched teeth. This isn't torture, it's physical therapy. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted to a brighter blue. Increase intensity. The electrical sensation doubled, then tripled. Ben felt his muscles tensing involuntarily, but his mind remained clear. In fact, he felt more alert than he had since waking up in the cell. Still no panic response, Dr. Catherine reported. Muscle efficiency is actually improving. Neural pathways are forming new connections at an accelerated rate. Enough. Queen Velnara gestured, and the electrical stimulation stopped. Test number 2. The next device activated, and Ben caught a whiff of something that smelled like rotting meat mixed with sulfur. The stench was so intense that his eyes watered and his stomach lurched. Olfactory assault, Dr. Catherine explained. This scent triggers nausea and disorientation in all known species. Most subjects become incapacitated within minutes. Ben gagged and covered his nose with his good hand, but he didn't fall down or lose consciousness. The smell was terrible, but he had experienced worse things during survival training. He had once been forced to eat food that had been sitting in tropical heat for 3 days. It stinks, he said, his voice muffled by his hand. But I've smelled worse. Impossible, Dr. Catherine said. This compound is specifically designed to overload mammalian sensory systems. Maybe you don't understand human sensory systems as well as you think. Queen Velnara moved to stand directly in front of Ben. What is the worst smell you have ever encountered? Ben thought about it. Probably a battlefield on Proxima Colony after it had been bombed with biological weapons. The smell of thousands of dead bodies in 90-degree heat, mixed with chemical residue and burning plastic. I was on the cleanup crew. Took us 3 weeks to clear the area. The Queen's eyes shifted through several colors quickly. You were exposed to decomposing organic matter contaminated with biological weapons for 3 weeks? Had to be done. Those people deserved proper burial, and someone had to clean up the mess so the survivors could rebuild. And this didn't break your spirit? It made me angry. Angry enough to join the military and fight back against whoever had done it. Dr. Catherine deactivated the smell device and activated another one. This time, Ben felt a wave of crushing sadness wash over him. It was like every loss he had ever experienced hitting him all at once, the death of his parents, friends killed in combat, relationships that had ended badly. Psychological warfare, Queen Velnara explained. This device stimulates the production of depression-inducing neurochemicals. It has never failed to break a subject's will to resist. The sadness was overwhelming, but Ben had felt it before. He had lost people he cared about, and he had learned to carry that grief without letting it destroy him. He thought about his crew members who had died in the battle, and instead of despair, he felt determination. I'm sad, he said, tears running down his face. But I'm not broken. Those people are dead, and being sad about it won't bring them back. The only thing I can do is make sure their sacrifice meant something. Turn it off, Queen Velnara ordered. Dr. Catherine deactivated the device, and the artificial sadness faded. Ben wiped his eyes and looked directly at the Queen. Is that it? He asked. No. One more test. The final device created a sound unlike anything Ben had ever heard. It was a combination of frequencies that seemed to bypass his ears and vibrate directly through his skull. The noise was so intense that he felt like his brain was being scrambled. Sonic disruption, Dr. Catherine shouted over the noise. This frequency pattern interferes with cognitive function and causes immediate disorientation. Ben dropped to his knees, holding his head with both hands. The sound was horrible, but he forced himself to think through the pain. He remembered sonic weapons training from the military. The key was to focus on something else, to give his mind an anchor that the sound couldn't touch. He thought about Earth. Not the planet as a whole, but specific places. The beach near his childhood home where he had learned to swim. The mountains where he had gone hiking with his father. The coffee shop where he had met his first girlfriend. Slowly, the sound became bearable. He could still hear it, but it no longer controlled his thoughts. Turn it off, he said, though he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him over the noise. A moment later, the sound stopped. Ben remained on his knees for a few seconds, waiting for his balance to return. When he looked up, he saw that all of the aliens in the cell were staring at him. How? Dr. Catherine asked. Practice, Ben replied as he stood up. Humans have been using sound as a weapon for centuries. We've developed countermeasures. Queen Velnara's eyes had turned completely black. Dr. Catherine, analysis. Your Majesty, this human has just demonstrated resistance to every form of biological, psychological, and technological warfare in our arsenal. Not only resistance, but adaptation. His stress responses are actually making him stronger and more capable rather than breaking him down. I told you, Ben said. Humans don't break easy. There's more to it than that, Queen Velnara replied. Your species has evolved not just to survive threats, but to use them as training. Every challenge makes you more capable of handling the next challenge. That's how we survived on Earth. Every generation faced new problems and found new solutions. The ones who couldn't adapt died out. The ones who could pass their abilities on to their children. Dr. Catherine was studying his equipment readouts with all four arms moving rapidly. Your Majesty, I'm seeing something unprecedented here. The human's immune system has not only neutralized our toxin completely, it has begun producing antibodies for toxins he has never been exposed to. What does that mean? It means his body is anticipating future attacks and preparing for them in advance. If we were to use different biological weapons on him now, they would be significantly less effective than they should be. Ben felt a chill of excitement. His body was learning from the Zephyrian weapons and developing defenses against things they hadn't even used yet. How is that possible? Queen Velnara demanded. I think, Ben said, it's because humans have been fighting each other for so long that we've seen almost every possible form of biological warfare. My immune system recognizes the basic patterns and knows how to respond even to new variations. That should not be possible. A lot of things about humans shouldn't be possible. But we do them anyway. Queen Velnara turned to her guards. Return him to his cell. Double the security protocols. I need to speak with the War Council immediately. As the guards gestured for Ben to move toward the opening in the crystal wall, Queen Velnara stepped closer to him. Commander Torres, she said quietly, I want you to understand something. We have conquered 17 worlds using the methods you just experienced. Entire civilizations have collapsed after a single demonstration of our capabilities. I understand. Do you? Because if your species possesses the same resistances you have just displayed, our entire empire is in danger. We cannot use biological weapons against an enemy that grows stronger when attacked. We cannot break the will of a species that treats suffering as education. Ben looked into her 6 eyes and saw something he hadn't expected to see there. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Your Majesty, he said formally, may I ask you a question? What? What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Queen Velnara stared at him for a long moment. I don't understand the reference. It's an old human philosophical question. You've built your empire by being an unstoppable force. You've conquered every enemy you've faced because you found their weaknesses and exploited them. Yes. But humans might be the immovable object. We might be the species that doesn't have the weaknesses you're looking for. And if that's true? Ben smiled. Then you're going to have to find a completely different way to fight. And I don't think you know how to do that. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted through several colors quickly before settling on deep red. Without another word, she turned and left the cell. Dr. Catherine and the guards followed, leaving Ben alone again. As the wall solidified behind them, Ben sat down on his platform and examined his shoulder. The wound was almost completely healed now, with just a small scar remaining where the plasma burn had been. More importantly, he felt stronger and more alert than he had in years. The Zephyrians had just given him the best physical conditioning session of his life, and they didn't even realize it. Every test they had run was designed to break him down, but instead, they had built him up. Ben leaned back against the warm crystal wall and closed his eyes. Queen Velnara was right to be afraid. If other humans could adapt the way he had, the Zephyrian Empire was facing its first real threat in 3 centuries. And Ben was going to make sure they knew exactly what that threat looked like. Ben had been in his crystal cell for 3 days when Queen Velnara returned alone. No guards, no Dr. Catherine, no equipment. Just the towering alien queen walking through the dissolved wall with her 6 eyes fixed on his face. Ben was doing push-ups when she entered, using only his right arm while keeping his left shoulder mobile. The wound was completely healed now, leaving behind skin that looked tougher than it had been before. He finished his set of 50 and stood up to face her. Your Majesty, he said with a slight nod. No entourage today? I dismissed them. What we need to discuss requires privacy. Queen Velnara moved to the center of the small cell, her presence filling the space. Her robes shifted color more rapidly than usual, cycling through deep purples and blues. Ben had learned that this meant she was either angry or worried, possibly both. I've been reviewing the reports from your tests, she said. And I've made a decision that my council finds extremely disturbing. Ben waited for her to continue. Over the past 3 days, he had learned that Queen Velnara preferred to control conversations, and interrupting her usually made her less willing to share information. I'm going to fight you, she said finally. Excuse me? Single combat. You and me, no weapons, no tricks, no interference. To the death. Ben stared at her. Why? Because I need to know exactly what my empire is facing. Your test results tell me that humans are resistant to our standard conquest methods, but they don't tell me how dangerous you are in direct conflict. I'm one person. Even if I beat you, which seems unlikely given that you're twice my size, that doesn't tell you much about humanity as a whole. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted to bright gold. Commander Torres, you're not thinking like a military strategist. This isn't about whether one human can defeat one Zephyrian. This is about precedent. Ben considered this. You mean what happens to your empire if word gets out that a human killed the great Queen Velnara in single combat? Precisely. For 300 years, my species has maintained order through the belief that we are superior to all other life forms. That belief is based on our record of never losing a war, never failing to conquer a target world, and never being defeated by any other species. And if a human beats you in a fair fight, that belief crumbles. More than that. If I lose to you, it proves that humans are not just resistant to our conquest methods, but actually superior to us in direct conflict. Every world we've conquered will see the footage of that fight and realize that they followed the orders of a weak species. Ben sat down on his platform and thought about the implications. Your entire empire is based on fear and superiority. If that's gone, what holds it together? Nothing. The Zephyrian Empire would collapse within months. 43 conquered species would rebel simultaneously, and we lack the military strength to suppress that many uprisings at once. So why are you willing to risk it? Queen Velnara moved closer to him. Because the alternative is worse. If I don't fight you, I have to admit to my council that there's a species we cannot conquer. That admission alone would be enough to start rebellions. At least this way, I have a chance to prove Zephyrian superiority. Or prove human superiority. Yes. Ben stood up again. What makes you think I'll agree to this? Because if you win, I'll order the immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from human space. Complete retreat, no future contact, and a galaxy-wide broadcast explaining that humans are too dangerous to engage. And if you win? Then I'll know that your resistance to our conquest methods was a fluke, and we can proceed with the invasion of Earth using traditional military tactics instead of biological warfare. Ben weighed his options. Fighting an 8-foot-tall alien queen with 6 arms seemed like suicide, but the potential payoff was enormous. If he could somehow win, he would save not just Earth but every other world the Zephyrians might target in the future. When? He asked. Now. My council is already assembled to witness the combat. We'll fight in the main arena of this ship, with full recording for later broadcast throughout the Empire. What are the rules? No rules except that we fight until one of us is dead or admits defeat. You may use any combat technique you know. I will do the same. Ben nodded slowly. I accept. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted through several colors rapidly. You realize you're almost certainly going to die. Maybe. But I've been thinking about something you said earlier. About how your empire conquers worlds by breaking their will to resist. What about it? You've never faced a species that gets stronger when you try to break them. But more than that, you've never faced a species that would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Most species value survival above all else. Humans value freedom above survival. That's why we keep fighting wars even when the odds are against us. That's why we explore dangerous places and try impossible things. That's why I'm willing to fight you even though you could probably tear me apart. Queen Velnara studied his face with all 6 eyes. You're not afraid. I'm terrified. But I'm going to fight anyway. Why? Ben thought about his destroyed ship and his dead crew members. He thought about Earth and all the people there who had no idea their world was being threatened. He thought about the 43 conquered worlds where entire civilizations had simply given up and died. Because someone has to, he said finally. Queen Velnara turned and walked toward the cell opening. Follow me, Commander Torres. It's time to make history. The arena was larger than Ben had expected. It was a circular chamber about 100 feet across, with crystal walls that rose 30 feet to a domed ceiling. Galleries surrounded the fighting area, filled with hundreds of Zephyrian officials and military officers. Ben counted at least 6 different alien species among the spectators, presumably representatives from conquered worlds. Dr. Catherine was there too, along with recording equipment that would capture every moment of the fight from multiple angles. Ben realized that this recording would be broadcast throughout the galaxy regardless of who won. Queen Velnara had changed out of her flowing robes and now wore what looked like a form-fitting bodysuit made from the same metallic material. It provided some protection while allowing full freedom of movement. Ben was still wearing his damaged military uniform. Any last words? Queen Velnara asked as they faced each other in the center of the arena. Yeah, Ben said. Thank you. For what? For giving me the chance to show the galaxy what humans are really like. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted to deep red. Begin, she announced. She moved faster than Ben had expected, crossing the distance between them in 2 strides and swinging 4 of her 6 arms at him simultaneously. Ben ducked and rolled to the side, barely avoiding strikes that would have crushed his skull. The queen spun and came at him again, this time trying to grab him with her lower arms while striking with her upper ones. Ben jumped backward and looked for an opening, but she was too fast and too strong for him to attack directly. For the first few minutes of the fight, Ben focused entirely on survival. Queen Velnara was incredibly quick for her size, and her 6 arms gave her coverage from almost every angle. Ben used his smaller size and human agility to stay out of her reach, but he couldn't keep dodging forever. The first solid hit came when Ben tried to get behind her. Queen Velnara's lower left arm caught him in the ribs, lifting him off his feet and sending him flying across the arena. Ben hit the crystal wall hard and felt the breath knocked out of his lungs. Queen Velnara advanced toward him, confident that the fight was nearly over. Ben forced himself to stand up and noticed something important. The hit had hurt, but not as much as it should have. His ribs weren't broken, and he could still breathe normally. You're stronger than you should be, Queen Velnara said, stopping a few feet away. I told you. Humans adapt. She came at him again, but this time Ben was ready. Instead of trying to avoid her completely, he let her grab his left arm with one of her hands while he struck at her elbow joint with his right fist. The blow connected solidly, and Queen Velnara made a sound of pain that echoed through the arena. Her grip on Ben's arm loosened, and he twisted free. Impossible, she said, flexing her injured arm. Your strike force was triple what it should be for your body mass. Ben didn't bother explaining. During the 3 days in his cell, he had been doing more than just exercise. He had been thinking about the tests they had run on him and how his body had responded. The electrical stimulation had improved his muscle efficiency. The stress had triggered accelerated healing and strengthening. Even the psychological attacks had made his mind more focused and determined. The Zephyrians had been trying to break him down, but instead, they had built him up to peak human condition and beyond. Queen Velnara circled him more cautiously now. Dr. Catherine, analysis. Your Majesty, the human's muscle density appears to have increased by approximately 40% since we captured him. His reflexes are operating at superhuman levels. This shouldn't be physiologically possible. It's not superhuman, Ben said, breathing hard but feeling stronger than ever. It's just human. We're designed to get better under pressure. Queen Velnara rushed him again, using all 6 arms to try to overwhelm his defenses. But Ben's enhanced reflexes let him track multiple threats at once, and his improved strength let him block strikes that would have shattered normal human bones. The fight became a deadly dance. Queen Velnara had the advantage in size and reach, but Ben was faster and getting stronger with each exchange. Every hit he took seemed to make him more resilient. Every successful block or strike improved his confidence and timing. The audience in the galleries had gone completely silent. Ben could see alien faces pressed against the crystal barriers, watching in disbelief as a single human fought their supposedly invincible queen to a standstill. The turning point came when Queen Velnara tried to use her full strength to end the fight quickly. She grabbed Ben with 4 of her arms and tried to crush him against her body while striking at his head with her remaining 2 hands. Ben felt his ribs compress and his spine bend in ways that should have broken him. But instead of breaking, his body adapted. His bones became denser and stronger. His muscles found new ways to distribute the force. His pain receptors shifted into a different mode, turning agony into useful information about his body's condition. And then Ben did something that no other species had ever done in combat with a Zephyrian. He laughed. "What's so funny?" Queen Velnara demanded, still trying to crush him. "You're making me stronger," Ben said through gritted teeth. "Every second you hold me like this, my body figures out better ways to handle the pressure." "That's impossible." "No, Your Majesty. That's human." Ben twisted in her grip and struck upward with both fists, targeting the nerve clusters under her arms that Dr. Catherine had mentioned during his medical scans. Queen Velnara's arms went numb, and her grip loosened enough for Ben to break free. He landed in a crouch and immediately spring-loaded into an attack. His enhanced muscles propelled him upward faster than Queen Velnara could react, and his fist connected with her jaw in a perfect uppercut. Queen Velnara staggered backward, 2 of her eyes losing focus. Ben landed and pressed his advantage, striking at her knees and trying to bring her down to his level. But the queen wasn't finished. She recovered quickly and came at Ben with renewed fury, using fighting techniques that he had never seen before. Her 6 arms moved in complex patterns that created overlapping zones of attack impossible to completely avoid. Ben took hit after hit, but each one made him learn something new about combat. His brain processed the patterns of her attacks and found counters that shouldn't have been possible. His body developed new reflexes in real time, adapting to a style of fighting that no human had ever experienced. The fight went on for 20 minutes, then 30, then an hour. Both fighters were bleeding and exhausted, but neither was willing to give up. Queen Velnara was fighting to preserve her empire. Ben was fighting for the freedom of every species in the galaxy. Finally, Queen Velnara made a mistake. She overextended with one of her attacks, leaving her balance shifted forward. Ben saw the opening and took it, using all of his enhanced strength to deliver a devastating blow to her solar plexus. Queen Velnara collapsed to her knees, gasping for air. Ben stood over her, ready to continue fighting if necessary, but she held up one hand in a gesture that clearly meant surrender. "I yield," she said, her voice barely audible. The arena erupted in shocked voices from dozens of different species. Ben looked up at the galleries and saw alien faces staring at him in wonder, fear, and hope. "Dr. Catherine," Queen Velnara called out. "Record my words for immediate broadcast throughout the Empire." Dr. Catherine activated his equipment, and Queen Velnara struggled to her feet. She faced the recording devices with all 6 eyes focused and her voice steady despite her injuries. "I am Queen Velnara of the Zephyrian Empire. I have just been defeated in single combat by Commander Ben Torres of the human species. This defeat demonstrates that humans possess capabilities that make them unsuitable for conquest or subjugation." She paused, looking directly at Ben. "Effective immediately, all Zephyrian forces will withdraw from human space. No future contact with human worlds is authorized. Humans are to be considered a protected species, dangerous to engage under any circumstances. Queen Velnara turned to address the galleries directly. Let this serve as a warning to all species throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire has encountered its first unconquerable enemy. Humans do not break when attacked. They become stronger. They do not despair when defeated. They learn and adapt. They do not surrender their freedom regardless of the cost. Ben stepped forward. Your Majesty, may I add something to the record? She nodded. Ben looked directly into the recording devices. My name is Commander Ben Torres of Earth. I want every enslaved species in this galaxy to know that resistance is not futile. Freedom is possible. You don't have to accept conquest just because your enemies seem stronger. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to give up. He turned to Queen Velnara. Your Majesty, I have a proposal. What? Instead of just withdrawing from human space, why don't you free all the worlds you've conquered? Give them back their independence and let them choose their own futures. Queen Velnara's eyes shifted through multiple colors. That would mean the end of our empire. Maybe it's time for your empire to end. Maybe it's time for your species to find a different way to exist in the galaxy. And if we refuse? Ben smiled. Then you'll find out what happens when humans decide to liberate a galaxy full of enslaved worlds. And I promise you, Your Majesty, you won't like the answer to that question. Queen Velnara stared at him for a long moment, then turned back to the recording equipment. By royal decree, all conquered worlds are hereby released from Zephyrian control. Local governments will be restored, and reparations will be provided for the damage done during our occupation. The Zephyrian Empire is dissolved, effective immediately. The galleries exploded in cheering from representatives of dozens of species. Ben looked up at them and saw tears of joy on alien faces that had probably given up hope years ago. Dr. Catherine approached them both. Your Majesty, Commander Torres, the medical data from this fight will revolutionize our understanding of adaptive biology. With your permission, I would like to study human medical techniques and share our knowledge freely with all species. Granted, Queen Velnara said immediately. Ben nodded. As long as it's used to help people, not hurt them. Of course. Queen Velnara extended one of her hands to Ben. Commander Torres, you have accomplished something unprecedented. You have defeated an empire without destroying it. You have freed countless worlds without conquest. You have shown mercy to an enemy who showed you none. Ben shook her hand. That's what humans do, Your Majesty. We don't just survive. We make sure others can survive too. As the recording ended and the celebrating crowds in the galleries began to disperse, Ben realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, and they were no longer under threat. More importantly, 43 enslaved worlds were about to taste freedom for the first time in centuries. Queen Velnara had been right about one thing. This fight had made history. But not in the way anyone had expected. Humans hadn't just proven they were unconquerable. They had proven they were liberators. And the galaxy would never be the same.